of justice.
For anyone on the bench of the Nigerian judiciary, this chamber is the ultimate.
Let us all strive to maintain the independence of the judiciary so as to ensure the rule of law.
And the fact that the ministry is responsible for prosecution of cases makes the ministry very visible naturally.
Of the Federal Republic of
And the Nigerian Bar Association.
and the Nigerian Bar Association. If it is to buy time, you know who is buying time.
Becoming the first woman in the country to discharge the function. To me, Allah wished it that way.
Welcome to the program, The Scale of Justice.
Tune in every Monday at 2:05 p.m. and repeat broadcast comes up every Wednesday at 6:30 a.m. on the network service of the NTA. Keep a date with us.
We as ministers in the temple of justice.
For anyone on the bench of the Nigerian judiciary, this chamber is the ultimate.
Let us all strive to maintain the independence of the judiciary so as to ensure the rule of law.
And the fact that the ministry is responsible for prosecution of cases makes the ministry very visible naturally.
Of the Federal Republic of
And the Nigerian Bar Association.
and the Nigerian Bar Association. If it is to buy time, you know who is buying time.
Becoming the first woman in the country to discharge the function. To me, Allah wished it that way.
Welcome to the program, The Scale of Justice.
Tune in every Monday at 2:05 p.m. and repeat broadcast comes up every Wednesday at 6:30 a.m. on the network service of the NTA. Keep a date with us.
Hello, this is The Scale of Justice, that program that dissects all the happenings in our justice sector in Nigeria. I'm Femi Okeowo with the pleasure of welcoming you to this edition. If Nigeria is to stem the rising spate of insecurity, then the nation must pay greater attention and respect to those intangible things we have continuously taken for granted. Two major of such intangible things are the enforcement of laws and the strengthening of all the dispute resolution structures, whether conventional or traditional. This has been the position of experts that spoke at the maiden edition of an annual lecture in honor of a one-time Attorney General of Kebbi State, who is being honored over his contributions in the days just before his demise 1 year ago to the resolution of the herders and farmers conflict in Nigeria. He is Malam Diko, who has been a forefront advocate for peaceful resolution of the herders-farmers conflict in Nigeria. Indeed, a Fulani man himself, he provided pro bono services for the Fulanis in Kebbi State. But then, we have continued to look at the issues that surround the herders-farmers conflict in Nigeria. And that lecture, which was organized by the A.B. Mahmoud Farm, was graced by very many important dignitaries across Nigeria who have interest in the resolution of this insecurity case. Now, we are going to do just a cursory look at this seminar, and then in the days to come, we shall be giving detailed submissions by the personalities, experts that spoke at this function. But suffices to say at this moment that this issue has taken an international dimension with the contribution of the President of the General Assembly of the United Nations and the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, who sent in messages, and we're going to focus on those messages in this edition. Welcome to The Scale. I am Femi Okeowo. Let's go to Burning Kebbi, where we had this function, and take just some sound bites of some of the contributions that came up at this seminar.
Farmer herder crisis is real. It therefore requires real-time and practically oriented solutions. The better approach towards resolving the crisis over the short, medium, and long term is to directly involve the stakeholders in coming up with the solutions at the conception, implementation, and monitoring phases. In this case, community-oriented approach is likely to yield greater dividend in diffusing and eventually eliminating the menace that has retarded economic development and created widespread insecurity.
I'm really delighted to be part of today's timely and important event to celebrate the memory of our late brother Alhaji Abubakar Boyediku, in particular regarding his legacy in advancing peaceful coexistence between farming and herding communities. In Nigeria, as in other countries in West Africa and the Sahel, the breakdown of the traditional social contract between farmers and herders and the resulting conflicts emanating from it is one of the defining challenges to social cohesion, prosperity, and peace. The majority of the people in this region depend on agriculture and livestock breeding for their daily subsistence. It is therefore imperative to continue in the path of Alhaji Diku's efforts to ensure that farming and herding communities restore the broken contract under which they enjoyed peaceful relations and benefited from economic exchange and coexistence. When conflicts occurred in the past, they were mostly resolved amicably through traditional and other local conflict resolution mechanisms. In recent years, however, these arrangements have come under increasing stress. Competition over land and water has always been at the heart of conflicts between farmers and herders. At the same time, other underlying factors, such as the adverse effects of climate change, diminishing resources, demographic pressure, political tensions, the proliferation of small arms, among other factors, have compounded the situation. In some cases, violent extremism and transnational organized crime have also contributed to raising tensions. In recent times, these have led to escalating tensions and conflicts, resulting in the tragic loss of lives, destruction of property, and the displacements of hundreds and thousands of persons, often women and children and the elderly. We therefore cannot afford to let this continue. Leadership at all levels must come together and act swiftly to reverse the current trends. The cost of doing nothing or engaging inappropriately will be even greater, affecting generations to come. While doing this, it is necessary to embrace an evidence-based narrative. Looking at the situation through an ethnic or religious lens is counterproductive. All actors, and I underscore all actors, must refrain from extreme and divisive rhetoric. It is also essential to distinguish farmer-herder issues from other security challenges, including cattle rustling, banditry, organized crime, and violent extremism. Stakeholders at all levels must rise above partisan interests and implement actions to resolve existing conflicts and prevent a future recurrence by addressing their root causes. The United Nations encourages and supports initiatives aimed at preventing and finding longer-term solutions to conflicts between farmer and herder communities, such as this event and the National Livestock Transformation Plan launched by the government in September last year, and which shows early indications of reduced.
Their leadership neither own farm nor cattle. Most of them live in the cities. They are part of the elite. They discuss and keep hitting up the politics so that they can go back and tell the pastoralists and the crop farmers that they are fighting for their rights. Now, this is what this has done. With this kind of politics, we found out that the pastoralists are left on their own and the crop farmers are left on their own in the villages. Meanwhile, their issues are being discussed supplementarily during supplementary time, as John Pepper Clark says it in Popa, because it does not constitute the main agenda of discourse. Now, these people, we have seen in one community after another, and I want to say this with all sense of humility, that there is today at most 10% of what is recorded as farmer-herder conflict that is really farmer-herder conflict. And I have recent evidence. Somebody said historic. No, I'm talking about recent evidence as last week. I spent 10 years in 14 grazing reserves in 3 states, and I did not find any conflict that cannot be handled by the pastoralists and the crop farmers living in the communities. However, we are hearing the killings, and let me add what data supports. And everything I say here, we have evidence and data to support it. Data supports that 90% of the killings and the conflicts happen far away from grazing reserves, the so-called earmarked grazing reserves. The question came to me, why? So we started crunching out the data. All of the grazing reserves today are inhabitable for livestock, pasturing, or even growing crops. Some people are managing to grow crops in them, particularly pastoralists that have lost their cattle to banditry and cattle rustling. They resort to farming within the grazing reserves. But as a resource for cattle rearing, these grazing reserves are not to be spoken about in any way. So what happens? Pastoralists are pushed to look for further feed and water for their cattle far away from the traditional grazing reserves of 1965 that my colleagues spoke about, that were created in the 19 northern states. And what happened? They get into conflict by destroying crops of farmers that are alien to them. They don't know them. So they see them as invaders, and therefore the narrative of Fulani invaders or killer headsmen and Fulanization started being hyped by the media. And this is scientific because the pastoralists are not known to this community.
More than the dynamics of the farmer herdsmen, we have to recognize that this, our ecology, is a shared ecology. And we have to make it work for all. And to make it work for all, we have to invest in all. Again, interestingly, in Bagudo and Kokobese local government, which have a significant, maybe predominant Fulani population, and that is where some of the visible gains of our rice strategy are most evident. The investment in more rice production led to a continuous occupation of land by farmers than hitherto was known. Meaning, rather than one crop per year farming, now we have farmers that are doing two, three crops per annum, meaning they are occupying the land continuously. But a lot of the farmers developed a very ingenious strategy of containing the conflict-causing behavior of their continuous occupation of the land by using the time-honored principle of sharing some of the agricultural waste with the pastoralists. So the pastoralists do not feel derived, even though the farmers are now continuously occupying the land longer than they used to be.
The seminar has attracted, or rather the symposium has attracted very high-level participation and very illuminating ideas and recommendations has come up. And especially you've had what the representative of the Vice President, His Excellency Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has given. And for many of us, we were unaware of some of these great efforts and work that has been done. So our secretariat of the symposium is going to really synthesize all the recommendations and all the key issues, and we shall be issuing out a report, and we'll be working with the Nigerian Institute of Advanced Legal Studies to work out a pathway that will assist in policy formulation and implementation. So I must say it has been extremely useful for all of us, and I'm sure very enlightening.
Some people have suggested, and you heard them, that we should sensitize some of the events happening, some based on natural resources sharing, some based on criminality, pure criminality, and some based on conflict resolution. How are we to expect for you to participate in helping government to do justice?
Well, the idea is not just us, but the idea is all citizens, all groups, and all organizations should join hands with the various tiers and levels of government to be part of the solutions. And all of the ideas that have come up in this symposium, some of them quite novel and new, we will do our best to make sure that they're well documented and to make sure that we have mechanisms of forwarding them to the relevant institutions and drawing attention appropriately. And I hope that at least we'll go down as making some efforts in this direction.
Still out of Abuja, this time to the courts. The retiring president of the Court of Appeal, Justice Zainab Okachua, has been going around the country commissioning projects that had been started for years now, and incidentally, coming up at the time she is leaving the saddle as the president of the Court of Appeal, a number of projects, a number of court of appeals have been commissioned across the country. The scale was on the team that went to Ilorin for the commissioning of that very beautiful edifice called the Court of Appeal in Ilorin. And here are highlights of that event.
In the Nigerian judicial system, the Court of Appeal is the second in the hierarchy of the courts, and it's next to the Supreme Court of Nigeria. As a result, this is an important and historic occasion, not only for us in the Court of Appeal, but also for the entire Nigerian judiciary. This division was established in February 1999 as the 10th Division of the Court of Appeal on application for a space to establish a division of the Court of Appeal in Ilorin. The then military governor of Kwara State, Colonel Rashid Sekoni, allocated one of the former political party secretariats, which was built by government during the political transition of President Ibrahim Babangida between 1987 and 1993. The building was sufficient at that time. However, the idea of it being a former political party secretariat, the need for additional space, and a more conducive working environment necessitated the building of this edifice. This is an epoch-making event, and one which should naturally gladden the hearts of all Nigerians, for it is the permanent site of the Court of Appeal in Ilorin. I stand here today to deliver this speech. I say a big thank you to all those that made our dreams come true.
I feel elated, I feel very happy. And
we want to call on the cultural, the Kwara State Arts and Cultural Troupe.
Will be located in my domain.
Thank you.
And for a purpose for which I belonged before. I was almost 25 years ago. I left the Court of Appeal as number 3 in Nigeria. So when the Court of Appeal was brought to Ilorin, I've already left court. But it met me in Ilorin. So thank God, the happiness becomes double.
In times like this,
you will be monitoring the activities of the Court of Appeal. What advice do you have to the justices of the Court of Appeal?
They should continue to do their best. They are not doing badly. If you look at Africa, Nigerian judiciary is something to be proud of. I believe with time and patience, because judges must be patient. With time and patience, we are going to be the best in Africa. We are already the best in Africa.
Thank you for talking to us.
Today is a day of joy, not only to me as the Chief Judge, but to the entire people of Kwara State. This edifice is befitting of a place where justice is dispensed. And I'm just speaking with the speaker now that they should try to replicate something similar to this for the state judiciary, so that when you come to the courts for adjudication, you find a serene environment that is conducive to peace. And this is what has been manifested in this Court of Appeal building.
This edifice is in part fulfillment of our yearning and aspiration that we must have conducive environment to work. This is one such environment for which one cannot but be grateful to government for providing this.
What, in your opinion, will this do for the dispensation of justice in Kwara State?
Now, if you look at the environment itself, it means the works of my Lord will be, they are going to work in a more conducive environment, and so also the lawyers that will be coming in. And when you have an environment that's conducive for doing your work, you can expect the high level of productivity and that justice will be dispensed according to law.
My Lord, you have served meritoriously, and that meritorious service has been acknowledged in all the divisions you have gone to. It's like a festival-like valedictory session. At the body of benchers, when we got into the controversy of what is the proper dress code for a female student who insisted on a particular mode of dressing for call to the bar ceremony, I recollect that my Lord became the reference, and I'm very sure my Lord will recollect that encounter. Tension flared up, there were arguments for and against, and in the process of the argument for whether it should be allowed or not, a retired Supreme Court justice stood up and said, please, I'm quoting him because I was at that meeting, please look at the PCA. The way she wore her scarf was good enough as an example of how the head can be covered before the wig. And behold, that was the end of that controversy, and the body of benchers resolved to allow head cover of the type worn by my Lord, which again, my Lord is wearing with an office. My Lord, you will always be remembered positively in this regard.
More of such will be coming in the days to come, and we shall be focusing, like I promised in the last edition, on the retirement of the President of the Court of Appeal, Justice Zainab Bukachua. And thank you again for being part of today's program. More will be coming in the days to come, and we shall be on top of all these issues. See you again.